We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world. We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Legends of the Dark Knight issue 6. This issue is written by Grant Morrison with art by Klaus Jensen, colors by Steve Buccellato, letters by John Costanza. Andrew Helfer was the editor, Kevin Dooley assistant editor. Cover by Klaus Jensen. Now these were deluxe format, so of course they were more expensive. So $1.50 was kind of pricey at the time, more of a what they would at the time called prestige format. Not exactly the same thing now. But we start off with a guy being tortured by some mobsters who are threatening some very vile things on his family and him. And they're about to set him on fire when they end up in trouble themselves, and not by Batman. Batman, for his part, is having nightmares seemingly involving Scarecrow, but he has the same one over and over again, he said. So while Batman tries to figure out what that means, he's been putting on the cape and cowl and going out and fighting crime, doing his usual thing. But behind the scenes, people involved in some sort of event keep getting these little cards with poetic verses on them, and nobody seems to know what they mean, but the person receiving the card ends up dead, often alongside innocent people. And it turns out these people are mobbed up, and they, in their desperation, are turning to a man they don't really understand and fear. And obviously they're desperate if they are putting out this cry for help. This was actually very, very good. I like Klaus Jensen's art. It really works well overall. There's a few panels that look a bit rough because the faces and proportions are a little off, but it's kind of stylistically done. I don't normally like the sketchier art styles, but I do like Jensen's. I think his unique look works most of the time, more often than it doesn't, and he's especially good with buildings, so you always get these great panoramic shots or city shots that look really cool. And he draws Batman really cool too. So overall, this is absolutely a solid story so far. This issue is fantastic. It's a 5-part story, much like the first story arc, and I'm more than willing to commit to that because the first issue was incredibly compelling. So we're going to see how the next issue goes, but this is another hidden gem from the days when comics were far superior. If you can find this, I would absolutely say pick it up. Like so many of these older books from this era, not many of them got reprinted, and that's a real shame because there's some great stories in these old books. And usually you can find this for a lot less than the cost of a new issue. I picked this one up for $2. The other issues in this story arc I think I got for $1.50, maybe $2 a piece, and I have no problem paying that for a good book. I would have paid the full $4, $5 for this and not batted an eye because I know it's going to be a more solid work than most of what's out now. So if you're looking for good Batman stories, the first story arc was solid and this one's looking like it's going to be at least as good as that one. So strong recommendation here. I had a lot of fun reading this and I'm excited to read the next issue. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Legends of the Dark Knight issue 7. This is part 2 of the Gothic storyline written by Grant Morrison with art by Klaus Jensen, colored by Steve Buccellato, lettered by John Costanza, Andrew Helfer editor, Kevin Dooley assistant editor, cover by Klaus Jensen. I actually think this cover's a little weaker than last issue's. Last issue's was really cool. This one is just sort of a regular panel looking, and it didn't really do much for me. But the story does make up for that. So the gangsters have summoned Batman using an inverted bat signal, which does not make Batman happy. And they practically beg him for help. They say they'll stop all crime, keep the streets clean until Batman can catch Whisper. Batman's like, yeah, right. You guys are on your own. You made this mess. So he bails on them. We've got the cathedral opening being mentioned again. So obviously that's going to play a part here. The phrase Gothic and the image of the cathedral on last issue's cover kind of hinted at that. Well, there's this young woman that's at the cathedral, and she seems to be a bit of a mystery. And then Batman is still having dreams that are very, very weird. And one of them is this ghostly ship at the front of the cathedral, and his dad's writing things down. And he keeps hearing this phrase because he looks around and sees all these dead kids sitting at desks and keeps hearing the phrase, unlock the rose. And it makes no sense to him. But some something about what the gangsters said to him reminded him of a time when his parents had sent him upstate to a boarding school when he was about 7 or 8 from the look of it. And there was a headmaster there who was a little bit of a weirdo and paddled him. But it was what the gangsters said about this person that's hunting them, Mr. Whisper, not having a shadow and being a child murderer that really stuck with Batman. Because somebody at the boarding school didn't have a shadow, but he thought it was his imagination. So when another gangster is attacked, Batman drops in to try and help, but this Mr. Whisper really seems to be pretty powerful. He looks like he's bulletproof. He fell from a very great height, and he may know Batman, but Batman may know who he is too. So we've got a little bit of clues here to work with. It's an interesting story. There's a lot going on here, and this idea of Mr. Whisper is interesting. This is a much more adult-themed Batman book than a lot of the others. That sort of changed over time, as I recall, but these first several issues were definitely more mature readers, and they're not approved by the Comics Code Authority, as you can see from the lack of logo on the cover. So they were allowed to do some darker themes with implied child abuse, apparently, but I would absolutely recommend this issue. A few of the panels in here do look pretty rough. It does look like Jansen hasn't quite mastered his style in this one, and some of the panels do look pretty rushed or just a little sloppy. It's not enough to make me not want to read the book, but it is something to be aware of. Nonetheless, the story is very solid, so if you find this, give it a chance. You can find these for a couple bucks. It's worth picking up some good Batman, unlike a lot of the modern garbage. So that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, issue 8. This is part 3 of the Gothic storyline written by Grant Morrison with art by Klaus Janson, colored by Steve Buccellato, lettered by John Costanza, assistant editor Kevin Dooley, edited by Andrew Helfer, cover by Klaus Janson. This cover is probably the best one of the storylines so far because it actually relates a lot more specifically to the story, and it has the dynamic image of the ghostly nun and Batman overseeing it. It's a really cool cover. I really like this one, vastly superior to last issues, and I think a little better than the Cathedral one for part 1. So Batman brings Alfred up to speed on what's going on, and he decides he wants to visit the school that he used to go to. So he manages to make a sizable donation to get a old audio recording of the headmaster, Mr. Winchester, reading poems. For nostalgia purposes, you understand, not to match voice prints. Batman figures out the man has an Austrian accent, and when he goes to check a recording of other audio, he accidentally puts in a tape of his father talking, and that sparks a memory. So Batman is taking the gyrocopter, which we haven't seen in years, out for a spin, and it turns out that Ottavio wasn't poisoned last issue by Mr. Whisper. It was somebody else. We find out who did that. We also get another glimpse of this young woman that is called the Nun. We're not real sure about her role in all of this, but we do find out a lot more about this Mr. Whisper when Batman goes to a monastery and talks to some monks, and the abbot tells Batman this old legend about how the monastery was once very, very corrupt during the plague, and it was because of this brother Manfred's pride and how he was converted to the dark side, and they tortured a bunch of nuns after they became all debauched and doing all sorts of things, shall we say. There's also the legend that this evil monk came back from the dead because he had struck a deal with the devil to live for 300 years. And he came back in this spectral ship, which is vaguely reminiscent of Batman's nightmares. So Batman takes the knowledge that he's learned and goes to the old monastery, and he thinks he sees a ghost. But did he? Apparently this monastery may hold some darker secrets that relate to Gotham as well. So we're left with a lead-in that suggests that something really bad is about to happen over in Gotham, and Batman's gonna have to get back there in time to stop it, of course. But there there may be some more explorations going on in this place. We'll see. I don't know. But it should prove pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading the next installment. This was actually a really interesting story because it kind of blends a supernatural theme in pretty seamlessly with a regular mystery of who this Mr. Whisper is. A lot of Grant Morrison stuff for me is very, very hit and miss, but this one is really solid. So I'm going to recommend it. You should be able to find this fairly cheap, usually for about half the price of a new comic book on the racks. So I would say pick this up instead. Even if you're paying new comic prices, this is a vastly superior story. You're better off reading the whole storyline, but you could enjoy this one on its own. There's just not a lot of action to it because it's the middle story. But the art's fantastic, the cover's really cool, and the story's fun. So if you get a chance, check this out. Very fun read. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Batman Legends of the Dark Knight issue 9. This is part 4 of Gothic, written by Grant Morrison with art by Klaus Janson, colors by Steve Buccellato, lettered by John Costanza. Assistant editor was Kevin Dooley, editor was Andrew Helfer. The cover's by Klaus Janson and it's really cool. It does relate to what's going on in the book as well. So that would have got me to buy the book right there. So we start with a hostage negotiation in progress, and that's how the cops find out Batman's back in town. Then Batman goes and visits Morgenstern and has a chat with him about exactly what happened with Mr. Whisper. And it's a pretty dark story. You know, Batman's trying to figure out what's going on, and we learn a little bit about what the supernatural, more occult elements are that are going into the cathedral and what it might be designed for. We also learn that Bruce Wayne might have been a victim of this child killer if he hadn't been removed from the school when he was. So Batman finds out about a meetup that Morgenstern was going to. That's when he finds Mr. Whisper and a whole lot of dead bodies. Batman is caught off guard and things don't look too good, but we do find out a lot about what's going on with Mr. Whisper and what his ultimate plan is. It's pretty dark, so Batman is in a very precarious situation and we have to see, hopefully he can get out of this and save the day. This was a great issue. It was not as action-packed as you would think, but the action that's there is very, very relevant to what's going on in the story. It's all plot driven. It's not just there for the sake of being action, and there's a lot of story. So there's a little something for everybody here. Plus the cover's really cool. The internal art's pretty good. There's a few panels where you can tell Janson hasn't quite refined his technique yet, but a couple of questionable looking panels really do not detract from the art or the story. So I highly recommend checking this out. I had a lot of fun reading it, and I'm looking forward to reading the final installment. So if you get a chance to find this and you can pay for price of a new issue or less, I would say absolutely pick it up. I don't think these have been reprinted at all. If they have, it's been a really long time. So be sure to check them out if you're looking for some good Batman stories. That's going to do it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Batman Legends of the Dark Knight issue 10. This is part 5 of the Gothic storyline, which means it's wrapping up this issue. Written by Grant Morrison with art by Klaus Janson. Colors by Steve Buccellato. Letters by John Costanza. Assistant editor was Kevin Dooley. Andrew Helfer, editor. So Batman has to get out of a Rube Goldberg death device so that he can stop Mr. Whisper. And we get to finally find out what that nun is up to and what her real reason for being there is. And turns out she's not such a nun. Whisper's plan to release a plague on Gotham has to be averted. Unfortunately, Batman's a little bit behind on the timing, and he ends up fighting with Whisper all the way down into the subway, and Batman's arm gets broken while Whisper tries to throw him in front of a train. Thankfully, Batman's a better fighter than Whisper thinks he is, and Whisper has to face a comeuppance that has nothing to do with Batman. And Batman does try and put a spirit to rest, and in the end, this was actually a really good conclusion to it. There's a lot of action in here. It's got good resolution. This could have been a movie script, and it's one of Batman's supposed first encounters with the supernatural, because remember, this takes place very early on in his career. So he's not used to dealing with like undead and demons and stuff like that. But the cover's really catchy. It does sort of apply to what's going on in the book, but not exactly that way. So it's a bit of a trick, but it is an effective one, because that is a really cool cover. The art's solid. Jansen is starting to really find his technique, and it has a bit more of a John Romita Jr. look to it than his usual style, but I do like it. It doesn't bother me. It's one of the few sketchier styles that I like, because I think it is effective, and Jansen has a much better conception of proportionality and anatomy than most modern artists do. So even when his designs look a little different than you would expect, they're still largely based in anatomical correctness, as opposed to people having weirdly long limbs. So I'm absolutely going to recommend this storyline. I thought it was a lot of fun. This issue, like most of them, are not good independently, but as a whole, the story is really solid. Thankfully, these issues are really cheap to find in the back issue bins. You can get them for far less than the cover price of a new book most of the time. I think I paid about $2 a piece, and these are easily worth that much money. So if you're looking for good Batman books, you can walk right by most of the new releases and go to the back issue bins and find some good stuff really cheap. And that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.